What happened on Smackdown last night is going to go down as one of the most shocking, most talked about, and most controversial betrayals in WWE history, and I genuinely cannot believe that Paul Heyman, the wise man himself, the man who has built his entire reputation on loyalty and strategic brilliance, just threw all of that away in front of millions of people watching around the world. Paul Heyman stood on that stage last night and betrayed the vision, the faction he helped create, the group he's been guiding and managing for months, and he did it in such a calculated, cold-blooded way that even I, who have watched wrestling for decades and thought I'd seen every possible swerve and betrayal, was left sitting there with my jaw on the floor trying to process what I'd just witnessed. The ramifications of this betrayal are going to echo through WWE for months if not years, careers are going to be altered, storylines are going to be completely rewritten, and the entire power structure on SmackDown has been turned upside down in a single moment. I'm going to break down exactly what happened, why it happened, who benefits and who suffers from this decision, and why so many people are absolutely furious about the way this played out. Let me set the stage properly because the context leading up to this betrayal is essential to understanding why it's so significant and so shocking. Paul Heyman has been the guiding force behind the vision for months now. He's been the one cutting the promos, making the strategy, positioning the members of the group as dominant forces on SmackDown. The vision under Heyman's guidance has been one of the most compelling and successful fact irons in recent WWE memory, running roughshod over the competition and establishing themselves as the power players on the blue brand. Heyman's involvement gave the vision credibility and gravitas that they might not have had otherwise, because when Paul Heyman is managing you, when he's speaking for you, everyone knows you're important and dangerous. The night started with what was supposed to be a celebration segment for the vision. They had just secured another major victory the previous week, and Nick Aldis had given them time on the stage to address their dominance and their plans for the future. The members of the vision came out first, looking confident and powerful as always, standing together as this united front that had been terrorizing SmackDown for months. Then Paul Heyman's music hit, and he walked out with that signature smirk on his face, that confident stride that suggests he knows something everyone else doesn't. He was holding a microphone and had this look in his eyes that in hindsight should have been a warning that something was off. Heyman started his promo the way he always does, with elaborate praise for his clients. He talked about how the vision had exceeded every expectation, how they had dominated every challenger, how they represented the future of WWE. He was giving them the full Paul Heyman special, that silver-tongued oratory that makes everything sound more important and more epic than it actually is. The members of the vision were eating it up, nodding along, clearly pleased with the praise from the greatest manager in wrestling history. The crowd was engaged, some people cheering the vision, some people booing them, everyone invested in what was being said. Everything seemed normal, everything seemed like a standard Paul Heyman promo building up his clients. But then Heyman's tone shifted. It was subtle at first, just a slight change in his voice, a different energy in how he was speaking. He started talking about how the vision had been successful, but that success had come because of his guidance, his strategy, his brilliant mind orchestrating their every move. He was still praising them, but there was an edge to it now, an implication that they owed everything to him rather than having earned it themselves. You could see some of the members of the vision starting to look uncomfortable, starting to sense that something wasn't quite right with where this was going. The crowd was picking up on the tension too, getting quieter, leaning in to hear what Heyman would say next. Then Paul Heyman said the words that changed everything. He said that the vision had been his creation, his masterpiece, but that every masterpiece eventually needs to be torn down so something better can be built in its place. The crowd gasped because suddenly it was clear where this was going. The members of the vision looked shocked, looking at each other trying to figure out if they'd heard correctly, if Heyman had just said what they thought he said. Heyman continued, saying that he had taken them as far as he could take them, but that he had found something better, someone more worthy of his services, someone who would actually appreciate what he brings to the table. That's when the music hit. Not just any music, but the music of someone who had been absent from WWE for weeks, someone whose return had been rumored but not confirmed, someone whose alignment with Paul Heyman would completely reshape the entire landscape of SmackDown. The stage filled with smoke and dramatic lighting, and when the figure walked out and stood next to Paul Heyman, the crowd absolutely erupted in shock and disbelief. I'm not going to name who it was because that's a separate story entirely, but the point is that Heyman had clearly been planning this for weeks, had clearly been working behind the scenes to orchestrate this betrayal and this new alliance, and the vision had been completely blindsided by it. The members of the vision immediately started toward Heyman and his new client, clearly planning to attack and make them pay for this betrayal. But Heyman and his new client didn't run, didn't back down, didn't show any fear at all. Instead, more music hit, and additional reinforcements came out, surrounding Heyman and making it clear that he hadn't just found one new client, he'd assembled an entire new faction to replace the vision. The numbers were suddenly even, and the vision had to make a choice about whether to engage in an all-out brawl or to retreat and regroup. They chose to stand their ground, and what followed was absolute chaos. The brawl that erupted on that stage was intense and brutal, with bodies flying everywhere, security trying unsuccessfully to maintain control, and the entire situation spiraling into complete pandemonium. The members of the Vision were fighting with the fury of people who had been betrayed by someone they trusted, throwing wild punches and not caring about technique or strategy, just wanting to hurt the people who had wronged them. Heyman's new faction was fighting with purpose and coordination, clearly having planned for this confrontation and being ready for it. The contrast between the two groups was stark, with the Vision fighting from emotion and Heyman's new group fighting from preparation. Throughout all of this chaos, Paul Heyman stood at the back of the stage with a microphone still in hand, and he was laughing. Actually laughing at the destruction he had caused, at the betrayal he had orchestrated, at the pain and confusion on the faces of the people who had trusted him. That image of Heyman laughing while his former clients fought desperately against his new clients is going to be one of those iconic wrestling images that gets replayed for years. It perfectly encapsulated everything about Paul Heyman as a character, the manipulator who's always 3 steps ahead, the man who values success and power over loyalty or sentiment, the ultimate opportunist who will turn on anyone if he sees a better opportunity elsewhere. Security and officials finally managed to separate the two factions, but not before significant damage had been done. Members of both groups were beaten up, the stage was trashed, and the entire Smackdown locker room had come out to the staging area to watch what was happening. Nick Aldis came out looking absolutely furious that this chaos had erupted on his show, and he started shouting at everyone to get to the back and promising there would be consequences for this behavior. But even as people were being herded backstage, you could see members of the Vision trying to get at Paul Heyman, trying to get their hands on the man who had betrayed them so publicly and so brutally. The immediate question everyone needs to be asking is why Paul Heyman did this. What was his motivation for betraying the Vision, a group that was successful and dominant under his guidance? The obvious answer is that Heyman saw a better opportunity, a more talented group of wrestlers or a more promising future with his new clients. Paul Heyman has never been about loyalty for loyalty's sake, he's about aligning himself with whoever gives him the best chance for success and for being associated with championship gold and main event storylines. If he believed the Vision had hit their ceiling or that his new clients offered more potential, then from his perspective the betrayal makes complete sense even if it's morally reprehensible. But there's also the possibility that this betrayal was about ego and control. The Vision had been growing more confident and more independent in recent weeks. They'd been making their own decisions occasionally, not always waiting for Heyman's input before taking action. For someone like Paul Heyman who needs to be the smartest person in the room and needs to be in complete control, that growing independence might have been threatening. By betraying them and building a new faction from scratch, Heyman gets to reassert his dominance and his control, proving that he's the one who made the Vision what they were and that without him they'll fall apart. The members of the Vision now find themselves in an incredibly difficult position. They've been publicly humiliated by the man who was supposed to be guiding them to glory. They've lost the mouthpiece and strategic mind that was a huge part of their success. And they now have a new rival faction that's probably going to be positioned as superior to them, at least initially, because that's how wrestling storytelling works. The Vision needs to respond to this betrayal in a way that re-establishes their credibility and makes them look strong rather than like victims, and that's going to be incredibly challenging given the circumstances. Let's talk about Paul Heyman specifically and what this betrayal means for his legacy and his character. Heyman has betrayed people before throughout his long career in wrestling. He betrayed Centimeter Punk, he's turned on various clients over the years, he's always been portrayed as someone whose loyalty lasts exactly as long as it's beneficial to him. But this betrayal of the Vision feels different and more significant because of how public it was and how complete it was. He didn't just leave the Vision to pursue other opportunities, he actively orchestrated their replacement and set them up to be destroyed by his new faction. That's a level of cruelty and calculation that goes beyond Heyman's usual opportunism. The reaction from the live crowd to this betrayal was absolutely electric. You had people who were shocked into silence, people who were booing Heyman viciously for what he'd done, people who were cheering because they love when wrestling gives them genuinely surprising moments, and people who were chanting for the Vision to get revenge. The diversity of reaction shows how effective this angle was in generating genuine emotional responses from the audience. Everyone had an opinion, everyone had a reaction, and everyone was invested in what happened next. That's exactly what a major angle like this should accomplish. The online reaction has been equally passionate and divided. Some people think this is brilliant storytelling that freshens up multiple storylines and creates new possibilities. Other people think it's repetitive because Heyman has done similar betrayals before and it's becoming his go-to move whenever WWE needs to shake things up. There are debates about whether the Vision can survive as a credible faction without Heyman, whether Heyman's new clients are actually better or more worthy of his services, and what the end game is for all of this. The fact that people are arguing passionately about all of these things means the angle is working and generating the discourse WWE wants. One aspect of this betrayal that's particularly interesting is the timing. The Vision was at the height of their power and success when Heyman turned on them. They weren't floundering or failing, they weren't losing matches or looking weak. Heyman betrayed them when they were strong, which makes the betrayal more shocking but also more questionable from a logical standpoint. Why would Heyman abandon something that's working? The answer probably lies in whatever opportunity his new alliance represents, but that makes Heyman look more like he's chasing shiny new toys rather than making calculated strategic decisions. The implications for SmackDown's overall landscape are enormous. You now have the Vision, angry and betrayed, looking for revenge against Heyman and his new faction. You have Heyman's new faction, positioned as the new dominant force that the Vision used to be. You have all the other wrestlers and fact irons on SmackDown who are going to have opinions about this situation and who are going to be affected by the power vacuum and the new dynamics. Nick Aldis as general manager is going to have to deal with all of this chaos and figure out how to maintain order while also allowing compelling storylines to develop. Every part of SmackDown has been touched by what Heyman did. Let me address what I think is the most controversial aspect of this entire situation, which is whether betraying the Vision makes Paul Heyman look smart or whether it makes him look needlessly cruel and petty. From a character perspective, Heyman has always been about making the moves that benefit him most, even if those moves hurt other people. So the betrayal is consistent with his established character. But there's a difference between being a ruthless opportunist and being cruel for cruelty's sake. The way Heyman orchestrated this very public humiliation of the Vision, complete with replacement clients ready to fight them immediately, feels more like cruelty than strategy. He could have left the Vision quietly and aligned with new clients without rubbing their faces in it quite so viciously. The members of the Vision individually are all talented performers who should be able to recover from this betrayal and rebuild their characters and careers. But they are going to need strong booking in the immediate aftermath to prevent them from looking weak or lost without Heyman. They need to win some big matches, cut some passionate promos about what was done to them, and prove that while Heyman was valuable, he wasn't the only reason they were successful. If WWE just has them flounder and lose repeatedly after this betrayal, it will confirm that Heyman was right to abandon them, and that will damage them potentially beyond repair. Paul Heyman's new clients, whoever they are immediately put in a position to succeed because they have the best manager in the business and they've been positioned as superior replacements for the Vision. But that also comes with enormous pressure and expectations. They need to live up to the hype that Heyman creates with his promos. They need to justify Heyman's decision to betray his previous clients. If they fail to deliver or if they are not actually as good as the Vision was, then this entire angle will have been for nothing and it will make everyone involved look bad. The question of whether the Vision will seek revenge against Heyman directly or whether they'll focus on his new clients is going to be interesting to see play out. Heyman is not a wrestler, he's a manager, so having the Vision target him physically creates some storytelling challenges. But Heyman also can't be completely protected or immune from consequences because that would be unsatisfying for fans who want to see him pay for what he's done. Maybe we'll get a situation where the Vision defeats Heyman's new clients and that humiliation is punishment enough for Heyman. Or maybe we'll get a segment where the Vision finally gets their hands on Heyman directly and gives him a beating he won't forget. Either option could work depending on execution. The production and presentation of this betrayal segment was excellent and really enhanced the impact of what was happening. The camera work captured the shock on the Vision's faces perfectly when they realized what Heyman was doing. The audio was mixed to emphasize Heyman's words and the crowd's gasps of surprise. The lighting and staging created drama and made everything feel important and significant. WWE's production team understood they had a major moment happening and they made sure it was presented in a way that maximized its impact. That attention to detail in presentation is part of what makes moments like this memorable rather than forgettable. Looking ahead to the next few weeks of SmackDown, this betrayal creates so many potential storylines and match possibilities. We need to see the Vision confront Heyman and demand an explanation beyond what he said during his betrayal promo. We need to see matches between the Vision and Heyman's new faction where both groups try to prove which is superior. We need to see how this affects championship pictures and other ongoing storylines on SmackDown. We need to see whether any members of the Vision blame each other for the betrayal or whether they stay united in seeking revenge. All of these threads need to be followed up on consistently to make this angle pay off properly. The emotional core of this storyline is the betrayal of trust. The Vision trusted Paul Heyman completely. They believed he had their best interests at heart and was guiding them toward greatness. They put their careers and their futures in his hands, and he repaid that trust by stabbing them in the back in the most public and humiliating way possible. That betrayal of trust is something everyone can relate to on some level, whether it's being betrayed by a friend, a business partner, a romantic partner, or a mentor. That universal relatability is what's going to make people invest emotionally in the Vision's quest for revenge and justice. Paul Heyman has now firmly established himself as one of the most despicable characters on SmackDown, which is probably exactly what WWE wants. Heyman works best as a villain, as someone the audience loves to hate, as someone whose eventual comeuppance will be satisfying precisely because he's so smug and cruel. This betrayal gives him nuclear heat with fans who sympathize with the Vision, and that heat will transfer to his new clients as well. Being managed by Paul Heyman after he betrayed his previous client makes you guilty by association in many fans' eyes, and that's going to make Heyman's new faction immediate top heels on the brand. The magnitude of this betrayal cannot be overstated. This wasn't a minor character turn or a subtle shift in allegiances. This was one of the most famous managers in wrestling history publicly destroying a faction he created and replacing them with new clients in the span of a single segment. The boldness of that storytelling decision deserves recognition even from people who might not love every aspect of how it was executed. WWE swung for the fences with this angle and they connected solidly, creating a moment that people are going to remember and talk about for years to come. So here we are processing the aftermath of Paul Heyman's shocking betrayal of the Vision on live television. The Wiseman showed that his wisdom is purely self-serving and that loyalty means nothing to him compared to personal advancement and alignment with whoever he perceives as the next big thing. The Vision has been left humiliated, angry, and thirsting for revenge against the man who built them up only to tear them down. SmackDown's entire landscape has been reshaped in a single segment, and we're all left wondering what happens next in this explosive situation. I need every single person watching this video to tell me in the comments right now what you thought of Paul Heyman's betrayal. Was this brilliant storytelling or a betrayal too far even for someone like Heyman? Can the Vision recover from this, or has their credibility been permanently damaged? And most importantly, how do you want to see the Vision get their revenge? This is the kind of shocking wrestling content that demands passionate discussion and debate from everyone who witnessed it. Make sure you absolutely destroy that like button, make sure you subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and make sure you share this video everywhere because Paul Heyman's betrayal of the Vision is going to be talked about for weeks and months to come, and everyone needs to be part of the conversation about where this incredible and controversial storyline goes from here.